There were finally some apparent signs that Di Fui's condition was improving. Nevertheless, Gu Shijio saw him swallowing the pills, yet still behaving as if nothing had happened. She was actually tempted to do the same. She took a pill and popped it into her mouth. She needed some water to help her swallow the pill, but as she searched for it, a man called out, "Oh no, there are so many bloody bats again. They have returned." Gu Shijio was surprised. In fact, she choked on the pill. Unable to breathe, she started coughing violently. The pill was not a small one, so she could not cough it out so easily. Soon, her face was red. Di Fui quickly gave her a tap on the back, followed by a tight squeeze from the back. Finally, she spat the pill out, and it went through the curtains. Gu Shijio could finally catch her breath, and she kept away the bottle of pills in her storage bag again. It was a waste to let the pill fly out the window, so she wanted to try and get it back. However, what she saw next completely stunned her. There were thousands of bloody bats surrounding them in the air. They were initially drawn to the carriage, but they changed their course all of a sudden and plunged downward as if going after something important. Gu Shijio was dizzy just watching them fly together. What was going on? Gu Shijio threw the guardians a look and saw their equally perplexed faces. The bats were coming after us just now. Guardian Hua heaved a long sigh of relief. Anyway, I am glad that they're not going to attack us anymore. Guardian Jean agreed. I thought the same. If they were really coming at us, we would not be able to stand a chance. Do you know what they're doing? It seems as though they are killing themselves. The bloody bats were fighting frantically against one another all of a sudden. They were not even bothered by the carriages anymore. Gu Shijio was confused by the strange encounter. She stood there watching the bats for a while, but could not figure out what they were doing. She somehow thought that it must have something to do with the pill that slipped out of her mouth. She turned her head around and turned to Di Fui for an answer. He was standing right next to her with his arms around her waist. He was looking in the same direction, as if deep in thought. What do you think the bloody bats are doing? Gu Shijio finally asked. When he was around, she would always count on him for an answer. Di Fui did not say anything. Instead, he pulled her into the carriage and carefully instructed her, Shijio, these purple cloud mushroom pills should not be exposed anymore. The bats are actually drawn to the pills. We have wrongly faulted Yin Yanli for the earlier encounter with the bats. Gu Shijio had the same doubt, but was not entirely sure. How can you be sure? Di Fui explained, I have seen everything with my eyes. They were plunging towards the pill. One of the bats seized the chance and swallowed the pill first, but was not able to handle the overwhelming effect. The first bat exploded, shattering its flesh into tiny bits. Meanwhile, the rest of the bats were frantically going after its meat, which sparked the fight. Gu Shijio was speechless. She never knew that the pills would actually attract the bloody bats. Perhaps the pills were as precious as the meat of the Tang priest to them. Gu Shijio and Di Fui were engaged in a discussion when Guardian Jean suddenly asked, What is the matter, Governor Yin? Apparently, Yin Yanli was on board the carriage. As expected, Yin Yanli spoke nonchalantly. I have a few questions for your master. He raised the curtains and entered the carriage. Shijio, were you studying something? How did you manage to attract the huge mass of bloody bats? It is not a good sign. Take it out and let me have a look. Di Fui leaned against the table as he casually replied, You're hilarious? Why should we show it to you? Shouldn't you be ashamed of your sudden intrusion? Yin Yanli was speechless. He was not expecting Di Fui's brutal and straightforward reply. His expression clearly showed that he was a little offended. Prince Nianma, we are on the same team now. We have to work together to ensure our safety. The attacks from the bloody bats are getting more frequent now. Obviously, they're coming after one of your magical items. For our safety, it is better if you to show it to me so that we can examine it together, he said in an icy tone. How did you know they were coming after one of our magical items? Di Fui added, These bloody bats are attracted to powerful sources of spiritual power. They were clearly chasing after your carriage, so you must have been in possession of something valuable to them. Di Fui gave him a sharp look in the eyes as he said, I did not know that these bats would go after spiritual power. Using this information in relation to the blood rain, Are you suggesting that the bats will attack the cities because they have their own sources of spiritual power as well? Yin Yanli's expression changed a little. He had obviously revealed a little too much information to Di Fui. Not many people knew about the characteristic of the bloody bats. Perhaps only him and Yun Qingluo. Even his closest follower knew nothing about the secret. It was rather unusual for him to have given away such a secret so carelessly. Was he being manipulated? Di Fui had the bloodline of the celestial beings and devils, so the kung fu that he possessed was a complicated mixture of both. He must have learned a method to manipulate his enemies into revealing their secrets. At least, that was what Yin Yanli believed. The man was very frustrated at that point. His fists were clenched tightly in his sleeves. Di Fui looked at him smilingly and said, "Mr. Yin seems to know quite a number of things. What are the other characteristics of the bloody bats? I hope you do not mind to share the information with us, Mr. Yin. As you said before, our safety is the priority, so perhaps with the information, we could discuss our strategies to fight them later." Yin Yanli could no longer hold back his irritation. "Ask my question first." Di Fui glanced at him as he continued. "Is it mandatory to answer your question first? Mr. Yin, as you said, we are on the same team now, so we should share everything we know and plan the next strike on our common enemy. Let's do it this way. You tell me about the secrets of the bloody bats, and I will share with you the magical item that attracted them. Although I will be the one who is giving up more than you, I am generous enough to share. I do not want to bother myself arguing with the likes of you." Yin Yanli clenched his fists repeatedly under his sleeves to vent her anger silently. He wanted to smash Di Fui's head right there and then. Overwhelmed, he put his fingers Toga cast a spell, but an item that Di Fui held in his hands caught his attention. The man was holding a ring that was embellished with a gem that glistened with 7 colors. Di Fui was carving the gem with a finger. It used to be in the form of a hemisphere, but was now carved into the shape of a rose using his nail. Every intricate detail of the petals was almost lifelike. Yin Yanli could recognize the material with a single glance. It was the toughest diamond that was ever discovered in the world. Yet, Di Fui was carving the diamond with his hand. Yin Yanli knew very well that he was not capable of doing the same. Therefore, he decided to hold back on the spell. The lack of patience in small matters would always upset great plans. He was not sure that he could kill Di Fui, so he should not act recklessly. There were still many opportunities ahead of them. In fact, Yin Yanli was going to host a grand dinner in the city to plot against his enemy. However, those were only his thoughts for the time being. He let out a smile to conceal his murderous thought. As far as I am concerned, these bloody bats are fond of blood and are very poisonous. They like to go after the powerful sources of spiritual power. The place where they gather is where the source of spiritual power lies. Does every city have a powerful source of spiritual power? Gu Shijiu asked. Yin Yanli was more polite when he talked with Gu Shijiu. It was evident from his reply. "It is indeed so. Shijiu, the spiritual stones that we have collected from the various hunting exercises are the source that attracts the bats. The spiritual stones are the key to support the entire wizardry barrier that shelters the city." Shijiu suddenly recalled the spiritual stones that she had stolen from Suye's city and nodded silently. She knew that Yin Yanli was not lying. However, there was still one question in her mind. If there are spiritual stones in the city, why don't the bloody bats attack every day? Why are they only coming once every 10 days? Is it a cycle for the spiritual stones to be exposed every 10 days? Are the stones otherwise sheltered by some wizardry barrier which prevents the bats from sensing their presence? Gu Zijia's questions were on point, and Yin Yanli could only let out a sigh after some thought. "It is more or less so. I cannot tell you more about it. Shijiu, it is not that I do not trust you. This is the secret that every city bears. As a governor, I have vowed to keep the secret. I'm sorry." Gu Shijiu merely smiled at him after hearing his response. She wanted to see how long he could keep on pretending. She knew that he would personally appoint the governor of every city. Therefore, he must have dismissed the governor that he had appointed to take his position. But why would he trouble himself if everything was under control? Unfortunately, Gu Shijio was not able to extract much information from him. She would have to do her own research and find out more on her own. All right, I have told you everything that I can. Shijio, shouldn't you hold your end of the deal and show me the source of your spiritual power? Yin Yanli had not forgotten about their arrangement. In fact, Yin Yanli had not found out the identity of the culprit who stole his spiritual stones. He was somewhat convinced that Di Fui could be the thief. After all, the bloody bats would only attack if there were a large number of spiritual stones in the same area. Di Fui looked into his storage bag and took out a claw. He explained, "It is nothing much, really. We were having a meal. All that is left is this claw." The claw was the size of a little finger, so it was hard to tell what animal it came from. Yin Yanli was annoyed. "Prince Nianma, are you trying to fool me? What kind of bird can provide such an immense source of spiritual power?" "The blue phoenix," Di Fui answered nonchalantly. Yin Yanli was speechless. He had never seen blue phoenix, but he had heard about it. He knew that it was one of the mythological beasts, but never knew that it was actually edible. Mythological beasts naturally possessed great spiritual power, but he was not sure if the claw really belonged to a mythological beast. Yin Yanli took the claw and tried to sniff it. He could already sense an extraordinary source of spiritual power in that brief moment. He was curious. "Where did you get it from?" Di Fui had a sip of tea before answering. "This is your second question. Now, what have you prepared in exchange for the information?" Yin Yanli did not know what to say. At least he knew the source of the spiritual power was not the spiritual stones. He decided to end the conversation and leave resentfully. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio was still studying the claw in the carriage. "Is this really the claw of the blue phoenix?" Di Fui nodded. He then took the claw and shattered it into pieces. He noticed that Gu Shijio had a confused look on her face. "It is dirty," he explained. Gu Shijio shook her head in disapproval. Even a feather from this creature would be considered precious, let alone its claw that still bears spiritual power. "It is a waste." Di Fui took out the remaining half he had of the creature and said, "There is more." Gu Shijio was delighted. "You should keep this for yourself. You are still weak. This will come in handy for your recovery." "You are complaining about me being weak," he teased smilingly. His smile had distracted Gu Shijio slightly, so she decided to change the topic. "You are doing quite well, aren't you? I saw that you were carving a diamond with your hand earlier." Di Fui pondered for a moment before putting the diamond on her palm. "You could do the same," he said. Gu Shijio examined the diamond, but could not find anything special about it. She then started to move her finger on the diamond, but could barely leave any mark on it. Perplexed, she looked at him for guidance. Di Fui gave her a delightful smile before applying a layer of cream on the diamond. After a while, he gave it back to her. "Try again." Gu Shijio tried again and managed to carve the diamond into the shape of a flower. Startled, she asked, "What cream did you apply? How does it soften the diamond?" "It is not actually a diamond, but a look-alike. Without the cream, it looks no different from a diamond. Once applied, the cream will completely unmask its true property." He continued, "I wanted to show it to you for fun. Never knew that it would get us out of a problem." They continued their conversation while indulging in the meat of the blue phoenix. Gu Shijio insisted that Di Fui should have a more substantial portion of it, so he did. After that, Di Fui asked Gu Shijio to meditate, as he finally had the time to look after her. However, Gu Shijio thought that Di Fui should be the one to mediate first. He was, after all, the one with the injury. Di Fui had the meat before, and it did not trigger any reaction, so he did not see the need to meditate. However, he felt different this time. His body was boiling, and there was an apparent rush in his blood circulation. This was how a normal body would react upon consuming the meat of a mythological beast. The lack of reaction he had before must be due to the strong foundation of his spiritual power. The meat could hardly trigger any reaction because his spiritual power was already greater than what the bird had to offer. Now that his spiritual power had been greatly depleted, he could finally feel the power of the bird. Difui made some calculations and noticed that the meat would eventually increase his spiritual power by 1/10, which was quite remarkable progress. He took a look at Gu Shijio and noticed her crimson face. She needed to meditate. Without wasting any time, he pulled her closer and sat her down. Listen to me. You should start first. I can meditate after you have fully absorbed the energy. Gu Shijio could not argue with him, so she did as told. The transfer of energy would take at most an hour. If the purple cloud mushroom could not trigger any reaction for Difui, then the half of the bird should be nothing to him. Moreover, he was the one who had the bird, so he should know the effects better than her. He was confident that he would be fine. Therefore, Gu Shijio proceeded to meditate. She did not meditate for long, however. About 20 minutes later, a sense of danger took over her mind. She started to panic as if something dangerous was about to unfold. Abruptly, she opened her eyes and realized that there was another man in the carriage. The man was not facing her, but she could immediately recognize him just by looking at his back. It was Yun Yanli. His palm was flashing with streaks of white light that were as sharp as a blade. He was about to give Difui a head-on strike. Difui was sitting there, helplessly. His veins seemed to be visible all over his body, while his face was completely drenched in sweat. He locked his eyes on Yun Yanli, but could barely say anything. Before Yun Yanli could deal him a blow, Gu Shijio quickly interrupted. What are you doing? Yun Yanli froze and slowly turned his head around to face her. Shijio, you are awake, he said with a tight smile. His smile could not hide the murderous look in his eyes. It was appalling. Gu Shijio acted as if she did not notice anything. She returned the smile and said, Yes, I have finally absorbed all of the power from the meat. What are you doing here in our carriage? And what is wrong with Difui? Yun Yanli paused before answering her concern. He must have gone overboard in his meditation. I noticed that something was not right, so I came to check it out. I was about to help him just before you woke up. Oh, I see. Gu Shijio answered without challenging him. She gave Yun Yanli a nod before approaching Difui to examine his pulse. There was an overflow of spiritual power in his body, like an unstoppable force that took over by storm. His vital signs indicated that he would be experiencing a significant change. He was obviously in pain, but he tried hard not to show it. Nonetheless, his physical state had revealed everything to Yun Yanli. His entire robe was soaked. Gu Shijio started to panic. She suspected that the purple cloud mushrooms must be the root cause. Perhaps he was experiencing a delayed reaction. How is he doing? Yun Yanli asked, seemingly concerned. He is fine. He must have been too obsessed with his training. What he needs is a little recuperation. Mr. Yun, would you please leave us? I need to help him recover. Gu Shijio tried to stay calm so that Yun Yanli would not know the extent of the matter. However, Yun Yanli was not a man who could be easily persuaded. The look in his eyes had clearly shown his lack of trust in what Gu Shijio had told him, so he decided to sit right across Difui. Shijio, I am very good at the healing injuries in muscles and veins. Let me help him. He then reached out to grab Difui's wrist. Yun Yanli possessed a good level of medical knowledge, so he wanted to find out what was wrong with Difui himself. However, before Yun Yanli could even reach Difui's hand, he was immediately pushed away by a 7-colored ray. The force was so great that anyone with insufficient spiritual power would have been swept out of the carriage. As for Yun Yanli, he could not help but tremble a little under the force. He felt as if his palm had been electrified. A tingling sensation still lingered in his hand, even though the light had dissipated. Utterly irritated, he exclaimed, What are you doing? I was just trying to help. Difui's face was still as pale as a sheet. There were droplets of sweat all over his forehead. However, his expression remained stern as he sat with his legs crossed like a Buddhist statue. He looked away and said unrelentingly, Get out. Mr. Yun, I would suggest that you leave, Gu Shijio chimed in. Yun Yanli noticed their inhospitable nature, so he agreed. All right, I will be outside. Call me if you need me. He then pushed the curtains aside and left the carriage. As soon as he walked out, Difui collapsed straight into Gu Zijia's arms. Gu Shijio held him up and realized that his hands were freezing yet sweaty. Let's leave this place. Gu Shijio could not play this game of charades any longer. It was too much of a risk due to Di Fui's condition. No, not now, Di Fui exclaimed. Yin Yanli must have set up a wizardry barrier that can prevent you from teleporting. If they tried to escape from the carriage, Yin Yanli would definitely be alarmed. He had his men all over the place and was personally very skilled in kung fu. They would not be able to run far before getting caught. The situation would be worse by then. Gu Shijio heaved a helpless sigh. What should we do? She then quickly took his wrist and said, "Let me help you." It is too late. Di Fui's breaths hastened. Given his vast medical knowledge, he knew very well that his conditions would not get any better in a short period of time. Instead of getting her to treat him, he passed her a flute. Do you know how to play the song, The 9 Songs in the Sky? The 9 Songs in the Sky was one of the modern songs with a traditional composition that she had heard about before. She was familiar with the tune. Yes, she replied with a firm nod. Di Fui was relieved. If you play the tune outside, help will come to us. She did not know that he had another way of escaping. She was somewhat relieved to learn that he had something planned. Di Fui proceeded to swallow another pill. What are you doing? Gu Shijio quickly asked. This pill will help to calm the blood in my veins. Gu Shijio never knew that such a pill existed. She was certainly very concerned, as this was her first time to have come across the pill. Is there any side effect? The pill will only temporarily suppress all of the symptoms for an hour. When the symptoms return an hour later, his condition would undoubtedly worsen, but Di Fui decided to keep the truth from her. If there were any other way, Di Fui would choose not to take the pill. In the long run, it would do more harm than good to his body, but it was the only choice he could make right now. Yin Yanli had become suspicious, and Di Fui believed that he would attack anytime soon. Gu Shijio walked to the outside and saw Yin Yanli right outside her cabin. He stood tall with his hands behind him. His eyes were locked on the horizon, seemingly at ease, but Gu Shijio could still feel his aura that spelled Di Fui's death. He turned around as soon as he heard some movement and was astonished. Are you done treating him? That was fast. Gu Shijio nodded as she put the flute into her mouth. Let me have a look at him. Yin Yanli turned around and was ready to enter. Gu Shijio pointed the flute at his chest to stop him. That is unnecessary. What he needs is a quiet rest. He asked for no disturbance. Yin Yanli could tell how serious she was at that moment. He smiled. All right, as you wish. His attention was then drawn to the flute in her hand. Do you know how to play the flute? A bit. Gu Shijio then tried to test the sound of the flute. If it were not for Mr. Fui, I would have asked you to play a song. It is fine. The sound of the flute is rather calming. A nice song can help him focus even better. Gu Shijio then put the flute in position and was ready to play. Wait. Yin Yanli stretched out his hand in an attempt to put away her flute. Quickly, Gu Shijio took a step back to avoid his hand. What is the matter? Smilingly, Yin Yanli offered her another flute. The flute is produced from the bamboo garden of Xiang Concubine. It would certainly produce a more melodious tune than the one in your hand. Gu Shijio did not take it. Are you saying that my flute is not good enough? She asked with a tight smile. Yin Yanli chucked as he answered casually. That is not what I meant. I appreciate the celestial beauty in all the songs that you're going to play. A normal flute, however, will not do your talent justice. Gu Shijio giggled. She studied the flute in her hand and agreed that it certainly did not look spectacular. The flute was made from a regular bamboo trunk and even had a small lump on it. However, since Di Fui had requested her to play that particular flute, it must mean something. Hence, she would not accept any proposal to change the flute. I prefer a flute that preserves more originality in its creation. She kindly rejected his offer. She turned the flute around, but did not hold it firmly. All of a sudden, it slipped and started to fall. Yin Yanli quickly reached out to grab the falling flute in time. You have to be more careful, Yin Yanli complained. Swiftly, he examined the flute thoroughly and found nothing abnormal about it. He was finally relieved and returned the flute to her. Shijio, what song would you like to play? Perhaps I can join in. Gu Shijio wiped the flute and said, "The 9 songs in the sky." Yin Yanli paused. He had never heard of that song before. "All right, you go on then. I shall be your audience for this song." Deep down, Gu Shijio wanted to sneer at him. Also, she knew that he did not have a clue about what she was up to, since there was nothing odd about the flute, at least by the looks of it. She, too, had examined it before coming out of the cabin. Chapter 2444. The Strongest Backup 3. She had dropped the flute on purpose earlier, so that Yun Yanli had the chance to observe the flute and lower his guard. Upon playing the flute, the melodious tune filled the air. Gu Shijio was a talented musician. She could sing very well and play an array of instruments. Although she could not play the flute as well as Di Fui, it was still very pleasing to hear. Yin Yanli could not keep his intense gaze away from her. She looked extremely beautiful with her long hair dancing in the breeze. It was such a surreal sight that Yin Yanli could not believe his eyes. A sudden, painful realization came to Yin Yanli. He had fallen for her. In fact, he wanted her very badly. Although she had a very low profile, she always stood out wherever she went. Furthermore, her kung fu was so powerful that no one could disrespect her. He thought that he was the perfect match for her when he was still a prince back in heaven. So he decided to stay by her side and fulfill her every wish. Secretly, he hoped that his actions would touch her heart one day. It was completely beyond his expectation that his world would change so radically. He had lost his status and even become a wanted man. However, Gu Shijio seemed to still enjoy his company and even save his life. He clearly liked her very much, but the feeling was never mutual. Although Yin Yanli could be very evil, he would never do anything to hurt Gu Shijio. Although women were known to do illogical things when they were in love, Yin Yanli was just the same. Whenever Gu Shijio was around, he was always tensed. He would have to try to mask his anxiety from her and always found himself struggling to impress her. He was certain that the only way he could keep her around was by force. Due to Di Fui's current condition, perhaps today was the best shot that he had to kill the mighty being. He knew what he needed to do, but as soon as she approached him, he immediately lost all courage and became overcautious about his decision. He could not believe that Gu Shijio would prefer a child over him. She used to be obsessed with a dead man. Now, she had obviously changed her mind and shared her affection with another man. Many thoughts bombarded his uneasy mind that kept fueling his fury. His fists were ready to fight, but he still could not find the courage. The song had finally come to an end, but the enchanting notes were still lingering in the air. "It was a great one," Yin Yanli exclaimed with a tone of admiration. Then, he immediately changed the topic. "Shijio, aren't you going to look for Huang Tu anymore?" There was no doubt in her mind that she should not tell him that Di Fui was actually Huang Tu's day. Hence, she gave a rather equivocal reply. "I shall pursue that search again if fate brings me back on that path." In fact, Di Fui and Huang Tu were one and the same. The main difference was their memories. She had forgotten about the past, too, so his lack of memory about their past did not make any difference to her. She was in love with the man, and that was enough. Yin Yanli was smart, but he grasped a different meaning from Gu Zijia's intended message. He thought that she had already found herself a new sweetheart, so Huang Tu no longer meant anything to her. "Oh, I see. Shijio, I did not know that you would fall in love with someone else." His fingers then moved in a planned motion and were ready to cast a spell. He was finally determined to launch his first strike, and would do so when Gu Shijio was least prepared. All of a sudden, a voice came from afar. "Niema, are you there?" Shocked, Yin Yanli immediately looked up and was perplexed. Chapter 2445. The Strongest Backup 4. A man in a snowsuit approached them from a distance. He looked tall and graceful, with a mask that covered his entire face. Only his enchanting eyes were noticeable. He stood on the back of a majestic horse that had its wings extended in the sky. The man's white robes fluttered in the wind, almost blending in with the mass of white clouds behind him. There was a wheel-like, lotus throne embroidery shining brilliantly with auspicious streaks of light on his robes. Naturally, He possessed an aura only a god would be able to obtain. He was the Divine Lord. Although his face was covered, his signature white robes had already revealed his identity. Many people chose to dress in white, but the white robes that Shun Jili possessed could not be easily replicated. The robes were made from the best quality silk found only in heaven. The hidden embroidery of the Lotus Throne was a secret mastery. No embroiderer in the mortal world could ever reproduce the same masterpiece. Yin Yanli had only seen the Divine Lord once from afar back in heaven, but the mighty man had certainly made quite an impression on him. Therefore, Yin Yanli was able to tell who he was as soon as the man approached. Panicked, he gasped in astonishment. The man and his wife were the ones responsible for the fall of his family, so what Yin Yanli felt for the man was an absolute resentment. However, he still trembled at the sight of the Divine Lord. The man was the leading figure of all the three worlds. His power was unfathomable. Although the Divine Lord had clearly toned down lately, Yin Yanli was still intimidated by him. He dared not act recklessly anymore. The Divine Lord had never truly cared about anyone else, except for his family. He took a look at the flute in Gu Zijia's hand and was impressed. "Were you the one who played the flute?" His icy tone lingered in the air. Gu Shijio cupped her hands submissively and said, "Yes, it was I." The Divine Lord took another look at the flute again. "Where is Nianma?" Obviously, he could recognize the flute. Gu Shijio knew that the sole intention of the song was to call for help. What she could not figure out was who could possibly intimidate Yin Yanli. She was just as startled as she did not expect the mighty man to show up. Before she could say anything, she noticed that the curtains behind her were flipped. Di Fui walked out bowed. "Father, I did not expect to see you here in the Shuro world." As soon as Shun Juli saw his son, the icy atmosphere was quickly replaced by a hint of warmth. "I am here to see you. You do not look like you have done very well here," he softly said. The man seemed to rejoice in his son's discomfiture. It was how they usually interacted. Di Fui rubbed his forehead in embarrassment. "Father." Shun Juli turned his eyes to Yin Yanli and said nothing. The stern look was enough to make Yin Yanli's flesh crawl. No matter how much Yin Yanli hated the man, it was not the right time to show his resentment. "Pleasure to see you, my lord," he bowed. All of his men proceeded to bow as well. Shun Juli only nodded at them. He then turned his attention back to Di Fui. "Nianma, you do not look very well. Come with me. Let's get you back to the pink of health." Shun Juli was not a keen talker. He did not even bother to exchange courtesies with people. He raised his hand and summoned a carriage that was furnished with an elegant palette of blue. The carriage looked simple from afar, but the details were very elegant. The graceful and stylish appearance clearly suited a powerful man like Shun Juli. Obviously, he was going to take his son with him. Di Fui naturally would not object to his father's invitation. He offered Gu Shijio his hand and said, "Shijio, let us go." Chapter 2446. The Strongest Backup. 5. It was a rather cloudy day. From a distance, the setting sun was already at the edge of the horizon. The carriage swept through the clouds, along with two of Di Fui's men. Yin Yanli was still kneeling in front of his carriage and watched helplessly as the carriage went into the distance. There was not a word that he could say to stop the carriage. It was a golden chance that he had unfortunately missed. His indecisive manner had cost him dearly this time. Everything that happened was not part of Yin Yanli's plan. He was still stunned by what had happened and was not able to calm his mind. He knew that Shun Juli was once in the Shuro world many years ago. But what was the man doing here now? He started to panic as he believed that the Divine Lord would soon find out about all the mess that he had caused in the Shuro world. All of his work over the past centuries could be ruined at once. His palms were cold and sweaty as he clenched his fists tightly in frustration. "Why did you stop?" Zhu Duqing had yet to realize what happened. He came out from his carriage, seemingly half asleep. He looked at the sky in utter confusion and asked, "How far are we from Lewis City?" "The sun is about to set." Yin Yanli looked annoyed at him. He was not quite fond of Mr. Zhu, apparently. He initiated some small talk with Mr. Zhu in hopes of getting some information out of the man, but Mr. Zhu quietly disregarded his presence. "Stupid. Yin Yanli was certainly irritated. They have just left. Do you still want to come with me to Ligua City? Yin Yanli was starting to get impolite with his guest. Zhu Duqing was not expecting the answer he received. What? Have they left? When did that happen? Why didn't anyone tell me about it? He sounded like a puppy who had just been abandoned. Yin Yanli obviously took joy in his misfortune. Why should they tell you? Who are you to them? He teased. Zhu Duqing casually fanned himself, as he added, Shijio is my master. It is the closest that anyone can get to her. They did not take me when they left, but they took Guardian Jean and Guardian Hua with them. They must be out of their minds. This is unacceptable. Who took them away? Why did they leave so suddenly? Didn't you say that you were inviting us to Ligua City? Why did you let them go so suddenly? He bombarded Yin Yanli with a series of questions, but Yin Yanli only managed to get the last few questions and answered him with a tone of sarcasm. Mr. Fui's father was here and took them away. Do you think I could stop them? He could not even make a sound. Astonished, Zhu Duqing finally stopped playing with his fan. His father? The Divine Lord came with his wife? Yin Yanli gave him a sibilant sound of disapproval. Only the Divine Lord came. His wife was not here. Zhu Duqing was curious. That is strange. They're always together. Why did they come separately this time? Yin Yanli was shocked, too. He knew that the Divine Lord would never be away from his wife. So he, too, was surprised by his wife's absence. Perhaps his wife is occupied. They can certainly be apart, occasionally. Yin Yanli murmured in uncertainty. Zhu Duqing did not comment any further. He gave the donkey a tap on the buttock and said, "Let's go." The donkey, as always, disapproved of the gesture. It whipped its tail at Zhu Duqing's face before launching itself into the distance at full speed. Yin Yanli was speechless. Master, are you going to let him go just like that? One of his men did not feel that it was a wise decision. Yin Yanli was a little distracted. What can he do for me if I make him stay? He is the man who can produce the devil-quenching clothing. Master, didn't you plan on getting him on board as one of us? Your plan to conquer the devil kingdom relies greatly on him. Yin Yanli finally recovered from his preoccupation. Indeed, he had always wanted to convince Mr. Zhu to join him, but the man had barely even left the devil kingdom. Also, it was not always easy to find him, as he was clearly a very sneaky man. It was probably even more difficult to convince him to make the devil-quenching clothing. How could Yin Yanli forget such an important thing? Go after him at full speed. Get back from me. On second thought, I shall go after him myself. Yin Yanli leaped forward at full speed. Out of the entire continent in the Shura world, perhaps it was only the Devil Kingdom that was blessed with many inhabitants. Once it was conquered, he could place another array formation there to absorb the spiritual power for himself. Only then could his kung fu be greatly improved to be on a par with Shen Jiuli and his wife. Therefore, the devil-quenching clothing was essential to conquering the Devil Kingdom, without which he would have no chance. If Yin Yanli were to enter the Devil Kingdom without the appropriate attire, he would probably be able to survive for some time. Nonetheless, as for his people, as soon as they stepped into the land, they would immediately turn into piles of ash. Determined, Yin Yanli used all of his strength to go after Zhu Duqing, who had just left the place 2 minutes ago. He was possibly traveling faster than the speed of light. Coupled with his good tracking skills, Yin Yanli believed that he would be able to find him in less than a minute. To his disappointment, the man was nowhere to be found. In that brief moment, Zhu Duqing had already disappeared, along with his visible donkey carriage. Yin Yanli could not believe it. The carriage was only led by a donkey with an attitude problem. Even a dragon would not be able to travel so fast. It was as if the man had disappeared into thin air. Frustrated, Yin Yanli could not help but clench his fists. Had Mr. Zhu figured out that Yin Yanli would be going after him? Had he escaped through a portal? Zhu Duqing was indeed a cunning man, Yin Yanli thought to himself. Nonetheless, he clearly recalled that Mr. Zhu was too weak to be able to open the portal. He even refused Gu Zijia's request to open it and would rather take the carriage with the donkey. How did he become so powerful all of a sudden? Was he only pretending to be weak? Furthermore, Yin Yanli had not expected a man like Zhu Duqing to acknowledge Gu Shijio as his master. It was certainly confusing. Just at that moment, another question arose. Zhu Duqing had spent many years in the Devil Kingdom without making any appearances outside. Now that he had acknowledged Gu Shijio as his master, that would mean that Gu Shijio had stepped foot into the Devil Kingdom before and made her first encounter with Zhu Duqing. Gu Shijio would not be able to make it into the Devil Kingdom without the devil-quenching clothing. The sudden realization left him dumbstruck. He suddenly remembered the theft in Governor Yes' residence. Other than the spiritual stones, a rare set of devil-quenching clothing went missing as well. Could she be the thief? Was the thief not someone from the Devil Kingdom? Yin Yanli's suspicion grew stronger, but he also found it hard to believe. If she really were the one who conducted the theft, she must have found out about his plan. Was she only acting in front of him? Was she worried that he might harm her? Utterly shocked, he continued to connect the dots. He then thought about the two guardians, Jean and Hua. These names sounded quite familiar to him. He finally recalled. The new Devil King had two courtiers who also shared the same surnames, Jean and Hua. Had Di Fui become the new Devil King during the time he had disappeared? It could not be. How could he achieve such a great title in such a brief moment? Nonetheless, it was Di Fui who they were talking about. The man's presence was already a miracle. As the son of a celestial being and a demon, he had always been full of surprises since young. He possessed the mentality of a well-grown man, even at a tender age. Moreover, he was equipped with many magical items supplied to him by his parents. He could do the impossible. Yin Yanli finally had the chance to catch Di Fui while he was at his weakest, but the Divine Lord's sudden interference had snatched his opportunity away to end the man. But how did the Divine Lord manage to show up in time? The Divine Lord had claimed that he was intrigued by the sound of the lute. Did the lute belong to Di Fui? Was a melody played by Gu Shijio a way for Di Fui to communicate with the Divine Lord? Did he make Gu Shijio play the melody? If he had known about the Divine Lord's whereabouts any earlier, why didn't he play the melody earlier? Also, since the Divine Lord had never acted without his wife, why didn't they come together this time? Many doubts surfaced, but Yin Yanli was very much convinced by one of his speculations. Could the Divine Lord be an imposter? Was it only an escape plan for Di Fui? As soon as he thought of it, he trembled. He tried to link more facts together and recalled that Di Fui was a man with many connections. Among them all, there was a man who could actually imitate anyone. I need my men. His tone changed completely. Gu Shijio looked at the man standing courteously in the corner, who was still bearing the appearance of Shun Juli. She could not quite believe her eyes. The man was only an imitation of the Divine Lord. Di Fui had asked his man to play the role of his own father. It was Deniso skillfully to the point where he was indistinguishable from the original person. He even managed to deceive her. She then looked at Di Fui and said, I can finally understand your escape plan. Di Fui's face was still pale as a sheet, but he answered her with a smile. I had no other way. The enemy is obviously deceitful. Preparedness averts peril. He knew that Yin Yanli was not a local and that his kung fu was much more advanced. So, he had already planned out an escape plan as soon as he left the Devil Kingdom. If he really ran into Yin Yanli, he would use the imitation to get to safety. He wanted to wait until they were in Ligua City to find out more about Yin Yanli's background and what kind of plan he was up to before escaping. Never had he expected that he would have overdosed on the purple mushroom pill and that he would almost lose himself. Gu Shijio took a walk around the fake Shun Juli. She found it hard to believe that his temperament was almost the same as the Divine Lord's as well. There was only a slight difference between this impersonator and the actual man. Perhaps only the Divine Lord's closest men could distinguish the two. Yin Yanli had only seen the Divine Lord a few times, so he certainly could not tell him apart. In addition, the Divine Lord had been in the Shuro world before, so it was not terribly unusual for him to visit again. Yin Yanli would certainly have believed the show. Get us back to the Devil Kingdom as soon as possible. Di Fui made his order. Yes. Guardian Jean answered promptly and continued the journey. Gu Shijio looked at Di Fui again. Preparedness averts peril, Di Fui calmly said. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief before turning away to have a look out the window. Are you troubled by Zhu Duqing? Are you blaming me for not calling him along? Di Fui asked. Hesitantly, she said, I certainly am thinking of him. However, this is not your fault. Everyone knows that the Divine Lord is not keen on the trivial. Chapter 2449. What should she do? The Divine Lord is also not fond of outsiders. Even though you use an impersonator, he needs to behave like the actual Divine Lord to prevent Yin Yanli from getting suspicious. Also, Yin Yanli's biggest interest is to kill you, so we will both be his main focus. He is yet to unravel the fact that we know about his plan, so he will not put Zhu Duqing in any difficult situation because he still needs him around for our future encounter. Moreover, Zhu Duqing is a great man who is capable of making the devil-quenching clothing. Yin Yanli will only try to convince him to join his army, so he should be safe. Di Fui gazed at her intensely with a sense of admiration. He did not wish for any misunderstanding, so he was prepared to explain everything to her. Impressively, she already fully understood the matter. He pulled her into his arms and said, Baby, your intelligence is unparalleled. He then planted a soft kiss on her forehead. Gu Shijio was stunned by his action, while Guardian Hua immediately walked away to give them space. Meanwhile, with an awkward cough, the man who played Shun Julie also left the scene. Gu Shijio suddenly felt concerned about something. Ask him to remove his disguise. Otherwise, it would alert outsiders if they saw the Divine Lord leading a carriage. Things would become suspicious. The smallest mistake could easily ruin any plans they had. They had to be careful not to leave any trace behind. There is no need. The real danger has yet to pass. He should keep the appearance in case something were to surface. Besides, he can turn invisible. She finally grasped the situation. You really have the best men with the most unique capabilities at your disposal. Di Fui only smiled at her. He was born with a gift of being resourceful. He had every man he needed to execute his plans when required. He then kissed Gu Shijio softly on her lips. Shijio, I want you to have the most secure life and stop wandering from one place to another all the time. Gu Shijio was happy to hear that, but her main concern at this time was his injury. How do you feel? She took a closer look at him and also started reading his pulse. His pulse seemed steady and normal. However, Di Fui told her that the symptoms would come back in about half an hour. Let me help you clear your circulation. Once it is unblocked and free-flowing, it will have a higher level of tolerance. When the spiritual power in your body starts going haywire again, the pain will not be as bad. Gu Shijio grabbed his hand and started treating his condition with a steady flow of her spiritual power. To her surprise, as soon as she started channeling her spiritual power to Di Fui, it bounced back at her with an even greater force directed by his body. Unprepared by the sudden rebound, she trembled a little due to the impact and shed some blood from her nose. She quickly channeled the spiritual power back to her body and looked at Di Fui in utter astonishment. There seemed to be a greater force that restricted the flow of her spiritual power into his body. Determined, she was not ready to give in and continued to examine his pulse. Everything seemed normal. However, she knew that there must be a stronger force that was hidden beneath the surface of his seemingly normal appearance. What if it had yet to unleash itself? What should she do? Gu Shijio tried to recall everything that she knew to see if there was any cure. Nevertheless, she had never encountered such a situation. She quickly alarmed the firmament stone and told it about Di Fui's situation. The firmament stone remained quiet for some time. Gu Shijio thought it was still asleep. Nonsense, it suddenly exclaimed. Gu Shijio was stunned by its response. The purple cloud mushroom comes with an immense supply of spiritual power. It will take days to digest one mushroom, and yet you have fed him at least a dozen at once. Did you really think that it is only a supplement? A fool's haste brings about no additional speed. He is only a golden immortal, spiritually and physically, which is not even close to the level of a mighty immortal. You have fed him with at least half the power of a mighty immortal. Difui's situation could be compared to a stream that overflowed because it was filled with the contents of an ocean. The force would definitely crush the small, narrow river and cause permanent damage. Gu Shijio assessed the severity of the situation. Half the power of a mighty immortal? Are you suggesting that the purple cloud mushrooms contain the power of a mighty immortal? Did they come from the spiritual power of a deceased mighty immortal? She bombarded the firmament stone with a series of questions. A thought suddenly hit her. When Huang Tu was immortalized, did all of his spiritual power get converted into these purple cloud mushrooms? The firmament stone was speechless. It regretted giving out too much information and started to worry about the possible catastrophe that awaited it for breaching the secret. Gu Shijio was simply too smart. She could infer a lot of information based on a simple conversation. The firmament stone only replied to her with a set of ellipses. She immediately understood. The firmament stone had its own temperament. When Gu Shijio said something wrong, it would undoubtedly correct her. But when she was right about something which it was not allowed to tell her, it would show her a set of dots. She never knew that the purple cloud mushrooms were Huang Tu's spiritual power in the past. No wonder she could only pick these mushrooms once. She also did not know that Huang Tu had the spiritual power of a mighty immortal while he was alive. If Difui was his reincarnation, it should not be too difficult for him to absorb the power, right? Yet, perhaps they would have had different physiques. When Difui first consumed the purple cloud mushroom, there was no sign of any rejection by his body whatsoever. Was it because the mushrooms used to be his own power? Supposing they were true, if he continued to consume the mushrooms one by one, he would probably regain his power to the level of a mighty immortal or even a great deity in no time. Perhaps his main mistake was to have taken almost half of the mushrooms all at once. It was hard to predict what would happen to him next. Little Song, do you have any idea how to solve this? No idea. The firmament stone paused and became somewhat dejected as it continued. Only he can help himself. Panicked, she took a deep breath to calm herself down. She took a look at Difui, who was quietly meditating. She suddenly felt guilty for letting him consume so many pills. I'm the one to blame. Master, this misfortune might be a blessing in disguise. This is perhaps a challenge that he has to overcome. He will be fine once he makes it through. The firmament stone reassured. What if he does not make it through? In that case, he will need a new body. Don't worry, Master. All it takes is another 20 years before he becomes a man again. Gu Shijio did not know what to say. She felt even more anxious after the firmament stone's reassurance. Difui, who had been sitting quietly at the side, suddenly added, Shijio, rest assured that if I really need to change to a new body, I will certainly take the firmament stone along. It knows about so many things, so it will definitely be helpful. The firmament stone was astonished by Difui's suggestion. Was he planning to take it to the grave with him? What had it done to deserve this? No way. My master is Gu Shijio. I shall never switch. The firmament stone fought for itself. Difui looked at it calmly. Shijio cares about me. In order for me to return as soon as possible, she will definitely send you with me to the dead. Don't worry. I will make sure that you will not suffer much loss. However, I do not like bracelets. Perhaps I will turn you into a jade that can be embellished on my sword, so that you can fight my battles with me. The firmament stone was utterly shocked by Difui's suggestion. It liked to be a bracelet and had certainly not imagined itself as an embellishment on a weapon. It could easily lose its life. Indignant at the injustice, it turned to Gu Shijio for help. Master, what do you have to say? Gu Shijio only sighed. Little Song, if he really needs you, I will make anything possible for him. I want him to return to me as soon as he can. In other words, she was willing to sacrifice the firmament stone. Master, this is a typical example of a bad friend who places a relationship over a friendship. You must not throw me away simply because of a man. Little Song, I know you have many solutions. If you can come up with a plan, your sacrifice will no longer be needed Gu Shijio persuaded. She could tell that the firmament stone was hiding something from them. Therefore, she joined hands with Di Fui to stress it out. The firmament stone was certainly dumbstruck. Helplessly, it finally surrendered. Let me think about it. In the end, the firmament stone finally offered a solution. The firmament stone attached itself to Di Fui's wrist so that when the seizure happened again, it would use its power to absorb the exploding flow of energy in his body. The firmament stone naturally possessed some mysterious power that could probably help Di Fui get through this great obstacle. However, there were limitations to its power as well. In case of overabsorption, it would have to risk being exploded and end up as a pile of ash. It could only help as much as possible, but explain to them all the possible outcomes. Guiltily, Gu Shijio gave the firmament stone a gentle tap and said, "Little Song, try your best. Do not force yourself too much." All of a sudden, an idea came to her. Is it possible for you to direct part of his power to me? I was once a mighty immortal. After all, my power is temporarily lost, but my physique remains as that of a mighty immortal. So, I should be able to keep some of the spiritual power, right? Little Tsang was suddenly hopeful. I can try. It could probably work. As soon as the discussion ended, the carriage came to an abrupt stop. Gu Shijio was unprepared for the sudden break and lunged directly towards Di Fui. Since Di Fui had not secured himself, he fell when Gu Shijio crashed into his arms. Luckily, the carriage was lined with thick carpets, so they did not have a bad fall. "Who is that?" Guardian Jean demanded sternly. "It is I," a man answered in an icy tone. His voice sent chills down Gu Shijio's spine as soon as she heard him. It was Yun Yanli. He was finally here. Had he found out something? Hesitantly, she wanted to go out and face him, but was immediately stopped by Di Fui. "Don't go out there just yet. Let us listen to him first," he said in a directed audio. Guardian Jean sounded neither aggressive nor friendly, so it was difficult to assess the situation. "Governor Yun, what is the matter? You should not simply stop the carriage of the Divine Lord. If he is unhappy about it, you will be severely punished for the disrespectful gesture." There was a look of uncertainty in Yun Yanli's eyes. After all, he did not have any proof of his speculations. After a short pause, he continued very politely, "I would not simply stop the carriage of the Divine Lord if I did not have any emergency that would require his help. The Divine Lord is treating the injury of Prince Nianma and has absolutely no time for you. You should go back now. When the Divine Lord is free, you can come back and ask for his help." Guardian Hua tried to chase him away. Yin Yanli would not take the rejection for an answer, so he answered apologetically, "The matter of urgency is related to Prince Nianmo's injury, so there is no time to spare. I sincerely request the Divine Lord's presence. If he has no time for me right now, I can follow the carriage first and wait until he is free to see me." Chapter 2452. The Escape. The Divine Lord's voice could be heard from inside the cabin. "What is the matter? Just voice your concern from outside the cabin." Yin Yanli said hesitantly, "The matter is confidential. I shall tell you face to face later. I can wait." The Divine Lord sounded disinterested. "As you wish." Yin Yanli bowed at the response. He seemed polite, but he was actually just acting in order to assess the situation. The cabin was not entirely soundproof, so he could hear what was actually happening behind closed doors. "My lord, let me go outside and have a look. Yin Yanli is a friend. If he is here, he may have something urgent to tell us. Perhaps he can share it with me," Gu Shijio requested. "Stay put," the Divine Lord answered briefly. "Shijio, if he is your friend, he can wait. Let me lean against your shoulder for a while." Di Fui sounded relaxed and unconcerned, as usual. Yin Yanli was astonished. He started to question his earlier judgment. There seemed to be nothing abnormal from their conversation. Was he overthinking the situation? In fact, he was afraid of the Divine Lord. So before he found out more about who he was dealing with, it would be wise that he did not act impulsively. Thus, he waited. Guardians Jean and Hua finally had time to tidy themselves up. They looked completely different from the time where they had just escaped from the trap in the poisonous swamp. The two men actually looked quite smart. Yin Yanli had never met the men before, so he was unsure if they were really the courtiers from the Devil Kingdom. With a smile, he tried to start a conversation. Both of you certainly dashing. You had looked so shabby earlier. Guardian Jean interrupted him with a hiss as he said hoarsely, "The Divine Lord prefers tranquility. Stay silent." Yin Yanli was speechless. It seemed that he did not even have the chance to get more information from the man. However, now was not the time to start a brawl. With a smile, he continued to remain quiet. With a flick of his finger, a flash of white light emerged and rose into the air all of a sudden. Guardian Jean was puzzled. "What are you doing?" Yin Yanli answered assuredly, "I have to summon my men for protection. The Divine Lord is helping Prince Nianma with his injury, so there should not be any external disruption at all. I can see that it is getting late. The blood rain and bloody bats will arrive any time now. My men can build a small wizardry barrier to keep this cabin safe." In actuality, he could not recognize Guardians Jean and Hua, but his men could. The flash of white light was genuinely a call to summon his men, but his intention was different from what he had informed the two gentlemen. Guardian Jean was unimpressed. "Why should the Divine Lord require your men's assistance to keep the cabin safe? There is no need." Yin Yanli's smile never faded. "Don't worry. My men will only secure the perimeter. This should not cause any problems. The Divine Lord rarely visits, so I must take this chance to show my hospitality." "Hospitality? What makes you think that the Shura world is your territory? Who do you think you are?" Guardian Jean questioned his position. Casually, Yin Yanli fanned himself while gesturing Guardian Jean to keep quiet. "The Divine Lord prefers tranquility. Stay silent." Guardians Jean and Hua stared at one another with their mouth agape, not knowing what to say. Before they could come up with a response, Gu Shijio suddenly emerged. "What are you arguing about?" The Guardians immediately bowed to her out of respect. "Miss Gu." Yin Yanli was ready to perform a spell, but Gu Zijia's presence changed his mind. He put his fingers down and said politely, "Shijio, how is Prince Nianma doing?" "Fine." "Yanli, the Divine Lord will see you later. Please be patient." Gu Shijio looked calm as she spoke to him. She then gave Guardians Jean and Hua a wave and said, "Both of you, come in here. The Divine Lord has something to tell you." Chapter 2453. The Escape 2. The two Guardians acknowledged her statement and went away promptly. Hence, only Gu Shijio and Yin Yanli were outside the cabin. Yin Yanli was quite relieved to have Gu Shijio with him. Although he was not certain if the actual Divine Lord was here in the Shura world, he was sure that Di Fui would not leave Gu Shijio behind. As the Divine Lord preferred tranquility, Yin Yanli did not strike up a conversation. Nonetheless, Gu Shijio did ask him about Zhu Duqing whereabouts. So Yin Yanli told her exactly what she wanted to know. The man had already left without telling him where he was going. Intensely, Yin Yanli gazed at Gu Shijio. There was still a matter that had left him perplexed. "Shijio, has Mr. Zhu really acknowledged you as his master?" Gu Shijio answered briefly, "Yes." "In that case, you must have been to the Devil Kingdom, right? That must be why you were out of touch with me for quite some time. I was worried about you." Yin Yanli looked at her with concern and care in his eyes. Gu Shijio faked a chuckle as she said, "I did not want you to worry about me. That is why I did not let you know that I went into the Devil Kingdom. Shijio, you are bold. The surrounding devil aura will easily harm a pure, celestial being like you. How did you get in there?" With a frown, Gu Shijio answered half-jokingly, "Why are you asking me so many questions? Is this an interrogation?" "Of course not. Shijio, it is not what you think. I am just a little curious." Gu Shijio heaved a sigh as she added, "Brother Yun, curiosity sometimes kills the cat." Yin Yanli took a step forward and said, "All right. Shijio, I'll admit, I was really curious. The Devil Kingdom has been in a state of chaos, so I have always wanted to venture into the Devil Kingdom and rule the place. I wanted to give the people there a peaceful life. However, the dense devil aura has greatly limited my mobility. If you know any helpful information, please share it with me." He made his statement sound so righteous. I did not know that you wanted to become the ruler of the Devil Kingdom. What great ambition! Gu Shijio said with a tone of sarcasm. Shijio, I have wanted to put an end to their misery for some time now. In the future, I can appoint you as the Devil King. I will even consider Mr. Fui for the role, if that is what pleases you. After he made his last statement, he stared at Gu Shijio intently in hopes of getting some clues from her expression. However, Gu Shijio remained composed. We can talk about this later. Brother Yun, haven't you said that there is something that you need to tell the Divine Lord? Now that no outsiders are present, I am sure that you can tell me about it, right? Yun Yanli stammered. About this, Shijio, it is not that I cannot tell you, but it is a long story. As he spoke, Yin Yanli tried to peep into the cabin, but he could not see anything as the curtains had blocked the windows. It had been 4 or 5 minutes since the guardians went into the cabin. Meanwhile, some voices could be heard from the distance. In unison, they said, Governor. 4 men appeared simultaneously around the carriage and bowed courteously towards Yun Yanli. These 4 men were the most capable subordinates that Yun Yanli had. They were also the ones who had met Guardian Jin and Guardian Hua before. The 4 of them made their way here as soon as they saw the signal. Governor, what can we do for you? Yin Yanli looked at Gu Shijio before asking his men. Do you still recognize the 2 great guardians from the Devil Kingdom, Jin Mengzhou and Hua Qianjun? The men bowed together as they said, Yes, we do. Great. Yin Yanli laughed out loud and grabbed Gu Zijia's hand. Shijio, I have a show for you. Gu Shijio wanted to break free from his grasp, but she knew that she would not be able to do so. Hence, she let him hold on to her hand. What show? She looked somewhat confused. Yin Yanli replied with a smirk. I am convinced that the 2 great guardians will potentially put Prince Nianma in danger. They have used false identities to stay undercover by his side. I am here to reveal their true intentions. Chapter 2454. The Escape 3. He raised his hand, and a golden light shone towards the cabin. Bang! A loud explosion occurred. The entire cabin had been shattered into pieces. Yin Yanli was surprised by what he saw. The once elegant carriage was left with nothing but its base. No one was present inside. Could all 4 of the powerful men have perished as well? Yin Yanli knew that he had not utilized his full strength from before. Based on the capabilities of the 4 men, he was sure that they would be able to survive. Hence, he continued to look around in order to find them. All of a sudden, some dark-colored water clouded his eyes. A stream of pitch-black water was splashed directly onto his face. As the source came from a very close distance, he was unprepared. His face was immediately stained with dark ink, which temporarily blinded him. Fortunately for Yin Yanli, he had not let go of Gu Zijia's hand. As long as he had her, he still had the chance to win. He grabbed her wrist tightly with his left hand while trying to clean the ink from his face. He needed to make sure that he obtained his vision back. Before he could use the cleaning spell, he could tell that the person that was grasped in his left hand was suddenly slipping away. He quickly wiped away the black fluid that clouded his vision and was surprised by what he saw. His left hand was clearly grabbing onto a hand, but only a hand was present. Gu Shijio was nowhere to be seen. Had she sacrificed her left hand in order to escape? Yin Yanli had never expected that. He then examined himself and realized that the ink-like fluid stained his entire face as well as his robes. There was a bad smell that accompanied the ink, and Yin Yanli was unsure if it was poisonous or not. He could not care less about his dirty outfit, but he had to find those people before they escaped. In a state of panic, he looked everywhere but could only see his men. Gu Shijio was nowhere to be seen. Where is she? He reprimanded. His men were equally shocked by what just happened. She was still here just now. One of the men answered. Is the lady a squid-like creature? I saw her casting a stream of black ink onto the governor's face. Governor, we do not know if the ink is poisonous or not. You should clean it off first. His men continued to bombard him with concerns. Did she cast the ink from her mouth? He wondered. Yin Yanli was well aware of her skills in the use of poisons, but she would usually use the poison at the most unexpected time without anyone noticing it. He did not believe that she would actually cast the ink through her mouth. How did she keep so much ink in there anyway? It did not seem right. Perhaps she was not the real Gu Shijio. Yin Yanli quickly checked the hand that had been cut off. The skin felt soft and supple. Moreover, the flesh was neatly cut. It was not a horrendous sight at all. Instead, it was more like a prop with a subtle sense of horror. Yin Yanli paused a while before smelling the hand up close. His men were looking at him strangely at the time. What was the governor trying to do? Was he trying to take advantage of her amputated hand just because he liked her? He definitely seemed like the kind of man who was into these gross things. Yin Yanli continued to sniff at the flesh. All of a sudden, he broke the silence with laughter. "This is not her hand," he said in a seemingly relaxed tone. The men were stunned. What did he mean? Before Yin Yanli could explain anything, his smile slowly faded away and was replaced by disappointment. Gu Shijio. He was obviously irritated. There was also a sense of frustration and helplessness in his mind. He flicked the amputated hand away as evil plans started to surface his mind. As the fake hand fell to the ground, he cast a streak of white light at it, turning the supple little hand into a pink, elongated arm of a squid. Needless to say, the one who engaged with him was not Gu Shijio. It was actually a squid monster that was eloquent and had the ability to change appearances. Gu Shijio and Di Fui were long gone. Even Guardian Jin and Guardian Hua had escaped, too. Yin Yanli was fooled. Annoyed, he was certainly unhappy about the escape. He thought he already had her in his grasps. But right now, he realized how foolish he had been to believe so. Gu Shijio could easily escape with her teleportation skill, but he could not figure out how the squid monster managed to run away. All of his men were there, but none of them witnessed anything. "Get your weapons ready and wait for my signal. As soon as you see the signal, go after them immediately." Even though he was fooled, he was relieved by the fact that the Divine Lord was not actually here. If he was not mistaken, the squid monster must have been the one who impersonated the man. Bewildered, he never knew about the existence of such a powerful being in the Devil Kingdom. After all, he was right about his speculations. Di Fui was the new Devil King, and Gu Shijio should be the one who stole his spiritual stones the other day. She must have found out a considerable amount about his plan. He took a deep breath, and the corners of his mouth immediately turned into a wicked smile. He knew very well that Gu Shijio and the rest of them would not be able to escape from him so easily. His tracking ability was known to be the best in the entire continent. As long as they were still in the Shuro world, there was no way they could avoid him. The only way they could escape was to return to the Devil Kingdom. However, the Devil Kingdom was thousands of miles away, and they had only been gone for a brief amount of time. Yin Yanli speculated that the furthest that they could go was about 300 miles. He started to plan what to do when he finally had them. He would not take things lightly anymore. His main priority was to capture Gu Shijio. He was now willing to do so by any means. As for Di Fui, there was no way he would spare his life. The Shuro world was his territory, so he should be the ruler of the place. He would not tolerate any forms of disorder where he ruled. Yin Yanli immediately started to perform the spell and activated a tracking spell. Time continued to pass, and it had already been an hour since their disappearance. Yin Yanli stood in the wild, looking at his surroundings with his teeth clenched. There was a goat that was wrapped in a dress that used to belong to Gu Shijio. Yin Yanli stared at the goat, so it looked at him in return. Yin Yanli quickly snatched the dress away from it and examined it carefully. He saw a paper doll present inside the dress. All of a sudden, it burst into flames in his hand and was turned into ash before Yin Yanli could stop the fire. Yin Yanli was filled with utter indignation. His tracking spell should have followed the essence of her soul, not the scent of her body. It was rare for him to fail, but this was one of the times where he had to admit defeat. He thought that Gu Zijia's soul would be the most effective element he could use to track her down. Never had he expected that his spell would end up guiding him to the goat. The goat certainly did not bear any essence of her soul, but the paper doll was the key. Gu Shijio must have attached part of the essence of her soul on the object to misguide him, leading him on an unfruitful chase. Meanwhile, he still could not figure out how she managed to put the essence of her soul onto a piece of paper. What kind of spell had she used? Unfortunately, as the paper doll was burned, he could not examine it anymore. He killed the innocent goat and stood there in contemplation. He asked himself, where would they be hiding? He heaved a regretful sigh at the realization that since Gu Shijio knew how to make a paper doll, she could easily produce a second or even a third doll to mislead him. He had no idea what he would run into if he continued to track her soul. There could be a trap waiting for him at every corner. Therefore, he decided to change his target. Could he go after Di Fui? He was unsure, for Di Fui's soul was no longer the same. Also, he was Gu Zijia's top priority, so she would definitely make the same misleading paper dolls for him. Therefore, the result would be fruitless. However, as it would consume a great amount of her spiritual power to attach the essence of their souls onto the paper dolls, Yin Yanli guessed that Gu Shijio would not do it for everyone else. If he decided to track down Guardian Jin and Guardian Hua, he should be able to find Gu Shijio and Di Fui as well. Unfortunately, they had not physically engaged with Yin Yanli, so there was not a trace of their souls that Yin Yanli could use to make a clear path. Suddenly, he paused to think about the squid monster. He had part of the squid's arm in his possession and speculated that after the squid ran away, it would definitely go back to meet up with Gu Shijio. He laughed at the faint trace of hope that he had of finding them. The trace guided him all the way to a sea of violent waves. Waves of water washed the shore and hit the corals with mighty splashes. By the sea, a person was sitting on one of the many corals that lined the coast. The person was elegantly dressed, with hair that was smoothly combed and long enough to touch the surface of the water, swirling around as gently as a revolving seaweed. The person sat with legs crossed and looked into the distance, seemingly preoccupied. It was already evening at the time. The sky was filled with rolls of emerging red clouds. The rain of blood, which occurred once every 10 days, was about to happen very soon. The blood rain was very poisonous. It had the ability to speed up the growth of most plants, but cause mutation in most animals. As for the humans, their skin would immediately be eroded as soon as they came in contact with the raindrops. There was no cure for it. To make matters worse, the rain could even harm one's soul. Some people had claimed that the bats were actually the transformation of all the souls that had died innocently in the rain. Fortunately, the sea had the ability to dilute the eroding elements in the blood rain. Hence, when the rain occurred, deep-sea beings would remain unaffected. Only the animals that lived 2 or 3 meters below the surface would be harmed. Yin Yanli tracked the octopus creature all the way down here, only to find the person sitting on a coral. As the person was not facing Yin Yanli, he could not tell the gender of that individual. However, when tracing its soul, he was sure that the person must be the squid monster. Was he or she recovering by the sea? Had Gu Shijio and the rest of them dived into the sea? Alarmed, the person turned around and stared at Yin Yanli. Yin Yanli could finally see the stranger's face and was shocked. The person had an enchanting face, centered with a high nose and a pair of bright, emerald eyes that were complemented with thick lashes. The creature had lips that were attractively tinted with a shade of pale red. Every time the person blinked, his or her watery eyes glistened vividly like the waves. Dressed with dark green robes that were elegantly embellished, the person had one arm that remained uncovered. Chains of shells and pearls circled the person's wrist and jingled with every move. It was melodious. The other arm was covered, so Yin Yanli could not tell if it was still attached. However, there was no sign of any apparent injury. The person slowly rose. The individual's robes danced in the gusts of wind. Yin Yanli was astonished as the person seemed to be naked under the loose robes. His or her bare, long legs were obviously noticeable. The smooth and supple skin of the person would catch the attention of any onlooker. There was only a silver bracelet that was secured on the person's ankle without any shoes. When he or she walked, the silver bracelet shone with sparkling lights following every step. Chapter 2457. The Lady Boy, too. Was the person a man or a woman? Yin Yamli thought that he had observed almost everything about the stranger, but he still could not identify the gender of the person. The person was very tall, about 187 meters in height. The individual certainly had the physique of a man. In fact, he or she appeared to be wearing a man's robe. Nonetheless, the facial features of the creature seemed to resemble that of a woman. Every move the person made was elegant and sassy. "Why are you so late? I have been waiting for you for so long." The creature looked at Yin Yamli with tearful eyes, like a young lady who had been eagerly waiting for the arrival of her loved one. Yin Yamli was dumbstruck. Quietly, he performed a spell at his fingertips. "Do you have anything to do with Di Fui?" "Make a guess," the creature said while giving him a wink. Yin Yamli answered in an unimpressed tone, "You are one of his followers." "Silly. Why did you ask when you already knew?" The man flicked his fingers in a feminine manner. Could the stranger actually be a woman? "Where is Di Fui? Where is everyone?" Yin Yamli took another intimidating step towards the creature. His aura was so strong that none of the approaching waves managed to touch him. They just rolled away in different directions. "You sound so fierce." The creature took a step back and accidentally slipped and fell right into the water. Was Di Fui his comrade, trying to escape by aqua drilling? Yin Yamli smiled smugly. Now that he had found the person, he would not let him or her go so easily like the first time. At that very moment, he slowly moved his fingers in a wave-like motion while seemingly clenching his fist. Immediately, the surrounding waves started to turn more and more violent. It seemed to be forming into the shape of a net. At the very center of the net lay the squid monster, seemingly helpless. The creature stood in the middle of the water net. The person's hair and clothes were thoroughly soaked. It winked again, and soon, droplets of water flowed from its thick lashes and streamed down its fair, lustrous cheeks, making it look like a beautiful woman in tears. The creature stared at Yin Yamli and asked, "How can a handsome man like you not know how to appreciate the beauty of a delicate woman? Did you really that I am merely a fish that you can capture with a net?" The stranger demanded, with a tone that indicated that it was rather annoyed. The answer was simple. Yin Yamli had seen more beautiful women than grains of sands. Most of the time, he did not even have a proper appreciation for their beauty. He gave the stranger a tight smile while clenching his fist. The water net resonated with his gesture and slowly tightened towards the center, strangling the creature more and more. "I now ask you again. Where are Di Fui and the rest of them? If you refuse to tell me, I will cut you into 8 parts. The water net continued to squeeze the creature, but it did not even struggle one bit. "I will not tell you even if you're going to slice me into 18 pieces, he proudly said. He was a really stubborn man. Yin Yamli ignored its response and continued to tighten the net. The net was operated with a great amount of spiritual power and was able to execute many deadly attacks. The water net had now sliced through the innermost layer of the creature's clothes and started cutting into its flesh and veins. Other than its ability to impersonate others, the creature seemed to have no actual power. It could not break free from the water net. However, as the creature managed to escape the first time, Yin Yamli paid extra attention to it and watched it intently this time. "Ah, you are so cruel. How can you do this to me?" The creature began to sound teary. Yin Yamli gave him a hiss and disregarded the remark. The creature then deliberately winked its tearful eyes at Yin Yamli. "I guess I am not attractive enough. Should I take off my clothes?" it murmured. Yin Yamli did not know what to say. The stranger was obviously very open about its looks. Chapter 2458. The Lady Boy 3. Yin Yamli seemed to have the impression that all the people from the Devil Kingdom were rather open and unshamed. Before Yin Yamli could continue questioning the man, The rare sight of the stranger's robes melting away caught his attention. First, the creature revealed its bare shoulders. Then, it revealed its refined arms, followed by its bare chest. Panicked, Yin Yanli quickly looked away. Something did not seem right. Did the stranger have a flat chest? It certainly seemed to be the case. Yin Yanli wanted to turn around and have another look, but that was when everything changed. A wave of dark water was approaching him in a violent motion. It was the same tactic again. Swiftly, Yin Yanli managed to keep the dark water a few feet away from him. He raised his hand to cast a spell that immediately formed a blue wall that could shield and keep the dark water away. The water had collided with the shield with a powerful force that would have shattered any ordinary objects. When the dark waves faded, Yin Yanli quickly checked on the creature and realized that the person was long gone. He was speechless. Although he had shifted part of his spiritual power toward the creation of the shield, he had not loosened the water net that had captured the creature. How did the individual escape? Yin Yanli looked around, but could not see anyone. All he could see were the waves. How did the creature get away so quickly? He cursed to vent his anger. Damn it, you lady boy. The stranger with a beautiful face turned out to be a man, leaving Yin Yanli puzzled. He stood there and put an evil smile on his face. Not even the roaring waves could stop his search. Nothing would stop him. With the powers of a great deity, he would still possess good control, even in the water. The sea was no obstacle to him at all. He lunged into the water at full speed and went right into the depths of the sea. As he was getting deeper into the ocean, he recalled a conversation that he had with Gu Shijio many years ago about a crystal palace that was hidden beneath the sea. Every time she was troubled, she would spend her time in the palace to contemplate her next move. That was when he realized that she was actually a good swimmer. Hence, it was likely that she would have brought Di Fui somewhere deep in the ocean to keep him safe. Perhaps there was a crystal palace within the depths of the water here in the Shura world as well. Furthermore, the blood rain was about to pour, so Gu Shijio definitely needed to find a safe place to hide. There were only two places that she could seek shelter from the rain, the ocean or Ligua City. These are the only two places that were within their reach before dusk. Since the creature that he was going after was a member of the sea, he had more reasons to believe that Gu Shijio and Di Fui were indeed hiding in the water. Furthermore, Ligua City was under the complete control of Yin Yanli. Hence, the sea was obviously a safer option. At full speed, Yin Yanli traveled just like a missile. Soon, he found a trace of the Squid Man from before. Most tracking spells would fail in the water, as all of the target's scent would be hidden. However, the tracking spell that Yin Yanli used would target one's soul. Therefore, even though the Squid Man was already in the water, Yin Yanli was still able to track him down. The Squid Man had tricked him far too many times for his liking, so he could barely contain his frustration any longer. He was eager to capture the creature again and find the Crystal Palace where Gu Shijio and Di Fui would be hiding. It would be best if he could round up the whole lot at once. Very soon, Yin Yanli was already at the bottom of the sea. Yin Yanli studied the area, but did not find any hideout. There were only some corals, seaweed, green algae, and all kinds of fishes and sea creatures. Without the Crystal Palace to provide them with refuge, Gu Shijio and Di Fui couldn't stay underwater for an extended period. Disappointed, he started to doubt his thoughts. Could it be that Gu Shijio and Di Fui were never here? Had they gone to Ligua City instead? Perhaps the Squid Man was just a distraction? It would appear that he fell for another trick. Yin Yanli clenched his fists tightly in frustration. He had fought along with Gu Shijio before, and the two of them had overcome many obstacles together, so he thought that he knew her style quite well. Gu Shijio had once told him that the most dangerous place would often turn out to be the safest. Hence, they could be hiding in his residence back in Ligua City. The sudden thought made Yin Yanli very anxious. He could no longer care about the Squid Man and wanted to return to Ligua City as soon as possible. However, in the distance, he noticed some movement in the water, as if something swimming by him. Even though he was initially puzzled, the answer came to him very quickly when he caught the scent of the Squid Man. Therefore, he had to change of plan. It would take him at least 4 hours to return to Liguis City, and there was a chance that he would find nothing there. Nonetheless, if the Squid Man was one of Di Fui's trusted men, he could capture him and use him as a bait to drive Gu Shijio and Di Fui out of hiding. That way, he would have leverage on them rather than blindly chasing them around the place. Yun Yanli quickly surveyed the area as he knew that the Squid Man was nearby. He knew that the man was swimming in different directions around him just to get him confused. Perhaps the man was using some invisibility spell. This made Yun Yanli annoyed, and he could no longer suppress his urge to kill the creature. "Find your way through," he called out while casting a spell. All of a sudden, a streak of bright light surrounded Yun Yanli's body and broke away in a violent expansion, transmitting energy outwards like a massive shockwave. Through the waves, the man could finally be seen. This time, he was wearing another set of dark blue robes, which shared the same color as the sea. Obviously injured, he shed some blood as soon as the waves brushed him through. "Damn it, lady boy. There is no way you can escape this time." His lips curved upward at its edges as a self-satisfied smirk appeared on Yun Yanli's face. At that very moment, he started launching deadly attacks at the Squid Man that only a great deity was capable of performing. The man noticed that things were taking a quick, dangerous turn, so he wanted to escape. A swift turn had caused him to run into an ice wall that blocked his way. Caught in a daze, he was still determined not to engage. He turned to another direction and soon realized that the surrounding water was quickly turning into ice. Soon, he was unable to move. "How dare you challenge me, you insignificant squid monster? What an overconfident creature." Yun Yanli stood before the big ice cube and looked at the squid monster with an egotistic smile. The man was not able to move, but was still conscious. "How blind?" he called out. Yun Yanli did not quite understand the man's reply. However, he could see that the man continued to wink his eyes charmingly. Soon, his long, thick lashes brushed across the surface of the ice. "Have you ever seen a squid monster with my unparalleled beauty? Were you then?" The man smiled as he said, "Yes." As attractive as a blossoming flower, his smiling face was the only thing that was worth paying attention to in the sea of plain, dull water. His eyes glistened along with his smile, which looked like stars in the night sky. The man was trying to use the bewitching spell to make Yun Yanli get rid of the ice cube. Only members of his species knew how to utilize this spell. Yun Yanli smiled at him and added softly, "I hate guessing. If you refuse to tell me, I shall end your life right here." Chapter 2460. The inducement. Yun Yanli launched a strike at the big ice cube. The attack did not break the ice, but somehow managed to hurt the man inside the ice cube. The attack severely hurt the victim, and the complexion on his face slowly faded away. He could not help but spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. His blood had stained almost every corner of the ice on the inside. Shocked, Yun Yanli finally noticed that the man's body was slowly melting away. Could he be a jellyfish? Once a jellyfish dies, it would just melt away in the water. Yun Yanli had fallen for a few of the man's trick, so he dared not make another move just yet. He tried to read the man's pulse by placing his hand on the surface of the ice. To his dismay, he found out that the man was slowly losing signs of life. The realization surprised Yun Yanli, as he did not want the creature to die right away. If the creature died, he would lose his leverage against Di Fui and Gu Shijio. Hence, he quickly performed a spell to melt the ice away and was shocked to realize that the creature's body no longer had any colors. As soon as the ice disappeared, the man collapsed to the bottom of the sea, seemingly lifeless. Strangely, even the blue robes that he was wearing turned white. Meanwhile, the look on his face slowly turned pale as he swayed along with the current lifelessly. Yun Yanli could not watch him die. He stuffed a pill into the man's mouth that could help him recover. In order to prevent the man from playing any tricks, he put his hand around the man's weakest point while feeding the pill to him. In case of an unexpected event, he would launch another strike at the man. After he fed him with the pill, the man still remained lifeless. Yin Yamli suspected that the man had died since there was no pulse present. Also, the man did not swallow the pill. It remained in his mouth. Was the man dead? Could he really be so fragile? Yin Yamli was aware that he had launched a deadly strike. Even a golden immortal would be greatly, severely wounded, so this junior immortal would certainly have felt its effects. The man did not possess a high degree of spiritual power. All he had were some weird, surprising moves. Moreover, Yin Yamli had yet to figure out the man's species. Perhaps he was a fragile creature. Having regretted his actions, Yin Yamli lowered his body in an attempt to check if the man was breathing. With his other hand, he placed his palm on the man's chest while trying to channel some spiritual power to keep him alive. What happened next was completely out of Yin Yamli's expectations. If he could choose again, he would let the creature die. However, there was no way to turn back time. Yin Yamli had to admit that he had fallen for another trick. The seemingly lifeless man bounced back to life as soon as Yin Yamli touched his chest. As the creature's teeth were still sunk into Yin Yamli's skin when he was pushed across the water, it made the wound worse and caused blood to ooze out of his hand, staining the surrounding water burgundy. Yin Yamli found himself poisoned, and the pain was 10 times greater than any form of external cut that Yin Yamli had ever suffered. He could not help but shiver in cold sweats. Thinking on his feet, he quickly used his spiritual power to drive out the toxins in his body. Meanwhile, he quickly tried to spot the squid man. The man was severely wounded by the strike and lay floating in the water. He seemed to be coughing uncontrollably. The creature intended to run, but fell right into the trap that Yin Yamli had prepared for him. The creature found itself caught in a tight net, which left him with no space to even shift his body. It decided to stop struggling. Yin Yamli, were you a fisherman in your previous life? Where did you learn to make so many nets? Yin Yamli ignored him completely. He only focused on driving the toxins out of his body. He had brought many pills with him, and some of which were really effective antitoxins. Although he consumed the appropriate pills shortly after being poisoned, the wound was still excruciating. Hence, he continued to squeeze the purple blood out of his hand until he saw that his blood was finally cleansed. The blood returned to its usual red tone. He then dressed the wound before dragging the net to the surface of the water. The man looked delicate but was unusually heavy. After swimming for a while, Yin Yamli's arms started to turn sore. In fact, he suffered from minor blackouts due to exhaustion. Carrying the man to the surface was as if dragging a mountain. It was unusually tiring. How could the man be so heavy? Yin Yamli threw a quick glance at the man and saw him resting with his eyes closed. His face was still as pale as a sheet. He stayed completely still like a lifeless statue. Perhaps the man was playing dead again. Yin Yamli would not fall for another trap. If the man was dead, he could always hang his body at the top of the city gate to lure Gu Shijio into his trap. Tired, Yin Yamli did not want to think about the man anymore. He had spent a great amount of time underwater, and his chest was starting to hurt. He had to return to the surface as soon as possible. He needed to get his men to search Lagua City as quickly as possible. After swimming for a while more, he realized that something was not quite right. His vision slowly darkened, and he could barely feel his legs. He wanted to speed up, but was halted by a sudden change in his body. He quickly looked around and was shocked by what he found. Many pitch-black sharks emerged close by. There were at least a dozen sharks, and each of them was twice the size of a normal shark. The sharks were all equipped with many teeth that were as sharp as swords. As soon as he noticed them, they started attacking. Even in his current state, Yin Yamli still believed that he could take them down. He raised his hand, and an emerald sword immediately appeared on his palm. As soon as the sword appeared, it was accompanied by a brief, high-pitched, but ghostly sound that was quite uneasy to bear. He knew that the sharks would do nothing to him once they heard the sounds. He would fight the sharks and make it clear to them that he was not someone that they should be messing with. About an hour later, all the sharks were floating lifelessly on the surface of the sea. All of their stomachs were slashed open, staining the sea with a large pool of blood. Meanwhile, Yin Yanli floated effortlessly to the surface of the water while trying to catch his breath. The fight for survival had drained all of his energy, but now that all the sharks were dead, he could finally have a moment to rest. Blood was pouring from the sky, eroding the bodies of the dead sharks and turning them into skeletons. Oddly enough, Yin Yanli's body was not affected at all by the blood rain. The bloody bats were not interested in him as well. They rushed from the sky and went towards the sharks to feed on the barely remaining flesh. Yin Yanli's spell of blackouts started to increase in frequency. It was easy to take down 1 or 2 sharks with his sword, but killing off the entire group proved overwhelming. The number of sharks attacking him seemed endless as they kept charging at him one after another. Soon, he figured that the blood of the dead sharks must have attracted more sharks his way. Therefore, after a while, he decided to retreat. Nonetheless, he swam right into the path of another group of sharks. The sharks were actually here to devour him. Groups of sharks kept coming fiercely and fearlessly, thus giving Yin Yanli an utterly difficult time. He was starting to get really tired from the never-ending battle. In the very end, desperate times called for desperate measures. He swam desperately to the surface of the water. The sharks were afraid of the blood rain, so none of them cared to attack him anymore. That was how he escaped. Were the sharks going after him, or were they trying to save the man who was trapped in the net? Yin Yanli took a look at the man and saw that he was wide awake. However, he laid quietly in the net while staring intensely at Yin Yanli. "Are you their leader?" Yin Yanli had to know. With a smile, the man answered with another question. "Do you really think that I will answer you?" Badly wounded, the man was clearly in a mess. Nevertheless, even in times of danger, he still spoke in circles around Yin Yanli, never quite revealing the truth. Besides that, he always gave Yin Yanli a carefree smile, as if nothing really mattered to him. Unamused, Yin Yanli decided to stop asking questions. He gave the man another look and was actually quite impressed by his determination. The squid man remained strong despite all the torments that he had put him through. What kind of species was he? How did Di Fui manage to find such a capable man? Yin Yanli wished he had the same talent in his army. He was an ambitious man with a wild vision. When he spotted a great talent, he would definitely try and convince the man to join him in achieving great things together. "Did Di Fui send you here to distract me?" The man winked at him again, but did not say anything. "Stop beating about the bush. Get straight to the point. Di Fui knows how strong I am, so he must be aware that you are no match for me, and yet he chose to send you here. He was basically sending you straight into your grave. I noticed that you have great talents, so are you really satisfied with the way he used you?" The man looked a little depressed. "Who cares if I am not satisfied? He is the Devil King. As a follower, loyalty is the ultimate rule that one must comply with." He ended the sentence in a rather miserable tone. Yin Yanli felt hopeful. The Devil King. Do you know where he came from? Yin Yanli gave him a smirk. The man blinked his eyes in curiosity. Where did he come from? He is the son of the celestial being and devil from heaven. He is not really part of the devil clan. He only went into the devil kingdom to hide from me. Preoccupied, the man murmured, "I know that he is the son of the divine Lord, but the devil blood still runs in his vein. He worked for the devil and turned the once chaotic devil kingdom into the orderly and peaceful world that we now live in. Indeed, he has the blood of the devil, but he is also a member of the celestial world, where the ultimate goal is to destroy all devils in favor of their own power. Do you know how many devils were killed by him?" The man did not answer. "What do you think about my kung fu as compared to Di Fui's?" Yin Yanli continued. "You are slightly stronger," the man said hesitantly. Yin Yanli was satisfied with the reply. In fact, his kung fu was far superior to Di Fui's. "Now that you are trapped in my hands, do you think that Di Fui would risk his life to save yours?" "I am merely one of his followers." The man sounded quite sad. Only true soldiers would willingly die for their king. Never had it been another way round, where the king would sacrifice his life for his men. Yin Yanli gazed at him intently. Do you want to live or die? To live, of course. The man did not hesitate as he answered. There is only one way you will survive. Pledge your loyalty to me and join my forces. A clever man should know what his best option is. If you are willing to work for me, I shall spare your life and give you the chance to do great things. In the Shuro world, no one is more powerful than me. Once I unify the entire Shuro world, I will appoint you as the ruler of the continent, if you work well. By that time, you can do whatever you please. The man shook his head in disapproval. Your offer does not sound quite right to me. If I were to become the new king of the Shuro world, what would you do? After all the hassle that you have gone through, would you choose to walk away and travel the world like a free man? Of course not. My goal is not to rule the Shuro world. I want to be back in heaven and be the new emperor there. What do you think about my offer? I will only offer it once. Don't blame me for missing the chance. If you pass, I will torture you severely and hang your body at the city gate to warn others against committing a similar crime. The Squidman's options were clear. One path would lead the man straight to his death. The other would possibly guide him down a luxurious, successful path. Hence, Yin Yanli was confident that the man would take his offer. After all, devils were born to be sly and greedy. Difui had only been the Devil King for 6 months. How loyal could the man be after 6 months of service? With enough interest, he believed that he could make the man change his mind. The man was not a fool, and Yin Yanli could see how smart and cunning he could be. He was definitely the kind of man who was easily lured by personal gains. When Yin Yanli was done listing out his terms, he kept quiet while waiting for the man to make a decision. The man did not say anything for the next 5 minutes. He then broke his silence when he smilingly said, You are only offering me the chance because you need to know the location of the Devil King and Miss Gu. I will not deny it, but I also appreciate your talents. Would you believe me even if I told you? Try me, Yin Yanli said briefly. They are at the bottom of the sea. Nonsense. There is no refuge there. With their current abilities, they will not be able to survive that long underwater. Silly. The Devil King can always activate a wizardry barrier to keep the water out. The wizardry barrier could also shield him from being visible to others. Yin Yanli was convinced that it could be a possibility. Do you know where they set up the wizardry barrier? I have no idea about the exact location, but I do know roughly where they are located. If you search for them carefully, you should be able to find them. There is a complicated look in Yin Yanli's eyes that made it difficult for the Squid Man to understand his true intention. As I said, you would not believe me even if I told you. The man dismissed himself with a wave. Yin Yanli studied the man intently, as if trying to see beyond his skin. The man did not even try to avoid Yin Yanli's intense gaze. He seemed to have nothing to hide. What is your name? What species are you? Yin Yanli asked some irrelevant questions. Kuan Yunjan. I am a dragon. The man answered accordingly. Yin Yanli had never expected that the man would turn out to be a dragon. He finally understood why the man was so talented. Yin Yanli said nothing more. He proceeded to take out his directed audio spell and sent some orders to his men. Go to Lugwis City and search the entire place. He then continued to describe the physical appearances of Difui and Gu Shijio to help his men with their search. Kuan Yunjan listened to the command with a smile. He knew that Yin Yanli would not take any risks and would search both places inside out. Soon, Yin Yanli ended the directed audio spell and was ready to dive into the water again, along with the net. You are coming with me. If we find them, this will be your first achievement. In the end, Yin Yanli had spent the entire night searching for his two prey, but the result was fruitless. There was not even the slightest trace of their presence. Once you cut it, I will die, and your plan of giving me a life worse than death will fail. Therefore, if you want me to suffer, there is only one way. Do you want to hear it? Yin Yanli was holding onto his sword so tightly that his fingertips started to turn white. He asked coldly, What method is that? Kuan Yunjan looked at him lovingly and replied, It is said that a hero always dies for beauty. You have a good outlook, and I like it very much. Do you want to consider seducing and sleeping with me for a few nights? Perhaps I will fall in love with you. If that happens, you will make it difficult for me to choose between love and justice. And if that moment were to come, I would rather die. Yin Yanli was furious. For the first time in his life, he felt like slicing a person's heart into pieces. Yet, he could not do so because this man could lead him to Di Fui. In desperation, Yin Yanli did not wait for Kuan Yunjian to utter another word. Instead, he knocked the man out cold. Where did Di Fui find this annoying creature with the ability to change his appearance at will? Perhaps it was true that birds of a feather flock together. Di Fui was equally skilled and annoying. Chapter 2465. Did not miss a single inch. The sky was bright and sunny again, as the blood rain had already come to an end this time. Yin Yanli had wasted his whole night here with Kuan Yunjian. He contacted his subordinates and asked for an update on their search in Ligua City. They had turned the entire Ligua City upside down, but still could not find the people that their master wanted. Have all the places been searched? Are you sure that you did not miss a single inch? Yin Yanli pushed his people. The young palace master who was in charge of the matter was slightly stunned. The only place that has not been searched in your bedroom. The expression on Yin Yanli's face suddenly turned serious. I had asked you to search every inch of the land, right? The most crucial place is my bedroom. Master, I have looked around your bedroom, and I did not find anything unusual, so I left. The only place I did not search was the underground palace, as I do not have the permission to enter the place. Yin Yanli remained silent. Gu Shijie was indeed hiding from the rain in Ligua City. Earlier in the carriage, she knew that Yin Yanli would tail them, and that the incident would not end well for her. It was only a matter of time before Yin Yanli took action. Therefore, she and Di Fui had a discussion. They asked Di Fui's subordinate to talk to Di Fui as if they were still in the carriage. At that time, she and Di Fui had already teleported away. She left Di Fui in a relatively safe place and went back into the carriage again. She then asked the subordinate to change into her appearance and settle matters with Yin Yanli. Meanwhile, she teleported Guardian Jean and Guardian Hua out of the carriage. After all, Gu Shijie had been friends with Yin Yanli for some time. She knew his style of working and remembered how good he was at tracking people down. Due to this, she had developed a set of counter-tracking techniques in the event that she needed to keep herself away from the man. She used the cloud leopard to hide the traces of her breath fro Yin Yanli. But this technique required the cooperation of the cloud leopard, which she had captured. Fortunately, Di Fui also knew a technique that hides the essence of people's souls into a paper doll. This method was much more convenient for the time being, so the two of them made a dozen paper dolls and gave them to Guardian Jean, Guardian Hua, and Guardian Kuan. After Gu Shijie rescued Guardian Jean and Guardian Hua, the two men caught a couple of wild beasts and hid Di Fui's and Gu Zijie's breaths onto them. Everything had to be done swiftly as no one knew how quickly Di Fui's condition would deteriorate. Gu Shijie had sent Di Fui to Ligua City. Di Fui requested that they hid in Yin Yanli's residence. After all, once Yin Yanli found out something was not right, he would surely send all his people to search the entire city. By convention, the only place that would not be searched was Yin Yanli's residence. However, Gu Shijie disagreed with his plan. Knowing Yin Yanli better, she guessed that the first place he would ask his people to search was his residence. Therefore, it would not be a safe place to hide. Gu Shijie was spot on, as Yin Yanli's subordinates searched his residence first. It was only after they had done a thorough search that they decided to explore the other areas of the city. Before the search commenced, Gu Shijie and the two guardians had snuck into Yin Yanli's residence and caught 4 people. They bombarded them with critical questions to understand the situation and then killed them right away. Then, all of them disguised as the 4 people who were killed and walked into the house through the front door without being caught. Chapter 2466. The young palace master did not recognize her Yin Yanli subordinates did not possess the same tracking abilities that he did. They certainly could not track the breaths of each person in the city, so they couldn't know that the guards and residents had been replaced. When a young palace master, Ming Dai, received the instructions from Yun Yanli to search his house, Gu Shijio and the gang had already familiarized themselves with the place. Fortunately for her, she had met the young palace master before, so she could certainly recognize her. But of course, the young palace master did not recognize Gu Shijio. During the search, Di Fui's body was expected to undergo some serious changes. However, it appeared that he had made a mistake somewhere, as he turned out to be fine even after the search was over. Gu Shijio was rather ecstatic by that fact. Upon checking his pulse, she found that he was even more powerful than before. It crossed her mind that the purple cloud, mushroom's spiritual power must have come from Di Fui. Perhaps all it needed was to acclimatize itself with Di Fui's current spiritual energy to stabilize itself. Unfortunately, her prediction was incorrect, as it was only a matter of time before Di Fui's body started to undergo some changes. It seemed to stir with an unprecedented amount of force. Fortunately for the four of them, the young palace master did not suspect anything wrong with the guards of the residence, so they were left alone. While thinking of a solution, Gu Shijio finally recalled the key to Yun Yanli's ability to absorb the spiritual power in the Shura world. He had used the starry array to do so. She once looked around the starry array in Suya City. However, the internal mechanism was too complicated, and opening the mechanism required a spiritual power above level 9. She did not reach at the time, so she could not open it. Even though she did not manage to understand the mechanism, she certainly remembered its location. She told Di Fui about the starry array, informing him that each city had its own starry array, and they were the source of power to support the wizardry barrier against the blood rain. Di Fui asked her about the layout and orientation of the starry array in detail. Then, he began to speculate on the possible location of the starry array in Ligua City. He predicted that the array must be in Yun Yanli's own residence. Gu Shijio was somewhat puzzled by this hypothesis, as the starry array in Suya City was in a bamboo forest somewhere in the outskirts of the city. It was even hidden inside a temple. So how could the starry array in Ligua City rest in the house of the city's owner? Di Fui was not bothered with her objection and explained the specific composition of the starry array. It turned out that the orientation of the underground starry array of each city was different, even though they were somehow arranged according to a pattern. For example, the one in Suya City was located at the northernmost point of the Shura world, so it was also in the northern part of the city. Meanwhile, Ligua City was in the center of the Shura world, so its starry array should be in the center of the city. Gu Shijio remained dubious, so Di Fui wanted to convince her. To verify his theory, Di Fui asked Guardian Jin and Guardian Hua to guard the residence. He then took Gu Shijio into Yun Yanli's bedroom. Guards were usually strictly forbidden from entering into Yun Yanli's bedroom. Besides Yun Yanli, the only person who could enter the place was the young palace master. Although there were alarm systems set in place, the two of them managed to maneuver their way through without setting any of them off. In the process, they noticed that Yun Yanli's bedroom was immaculate and neat. It was very unlike the one in Suya City, which was occupied by a bunch of concubines who were vital in opening the mechanism. Contrastingly, there was no one in sight over here. Gu Shijio quickly ransacked the bedroom, but did not see any underground passage to the starry array. Meanwhile, Di Fui sat at the table and started to write and draw. When Gu Shijio finally went back to him, she found that he had drawn a very complicated astrological map on a piece of paper. The map was dotted with stars all over, and it made Gu Shijio feel a little dizzy. Gu Shijio was also an expert in astrology. However, she was confused by the map that Di Fui had drawn out. She felt like a middle school student who was reading through a university-level textbook. She pulled his sleeve and asked, "I thought you said that the starry array is in this palace? Where can we find it?" Di Fui looked around and pinched with his fingers together as if casting a spell. After a while, He pointed at the tile in the center of the room and said, "If I am not mistaken, the starry array is below this tile. However, it can only be broken using a star-breaking technique." Gu Shijio looked at him doubtfully. The term that he used was foreign to her. What is a star-breaking technique? She had never heard of it. Di Fui pinched his fingers together again and said, "Watch me do it first. I will teach you later." All of a sudden, a colorful array of lights emerged from his fingertips and gradually developed into the shape of a pagoda. The pagoda then slammed into the floor tiles as if to smash them. Upon collision, one could tell that there was something invisible on the floor tiles that were broken by the pagoda. An entrance to a tunnel could then be seen. Inside the tunnel, some staircases wriggled downward. Apparently, the starry array was here. Gu Shijio looked at Di Fui and gave him a thumbs up. You can actually crack such a complex astrological map. It seems that what you have learned is really extraordinary. Did you learn this from the Divine Lord? Di Fui was stunned, and his eyes flashed slightly. If I told you that I was born with this knowledge, would you believe it? Definitely not. There were many things that one could learn by observing or with the help of a teacher, but the astrological map must be taught by a master, especially one as complicated as the one that Di Fui had drawn. Di Fui was disappointed by her response. After all, he did not learn about this astrological map from his father. It was suddenly just generated in his mind. It seemed that he understood it a few years ago and was now just trying to recall it. Had he somehow retrieved part of his memory as Huang too? He tried to access more information from his brain, but his mind was empty. He could not remember anything else. Di Fui was too lazy to think more deeply about this matter, so he pulled Gu Shijio along with him and walked down the stairs. "Let's go in." The stairs were made with jade, and the two of them followed the steps down into the hidden passage. What they had found was that the pathway inside the place was as dense as a spider's web. It led to all directions. Gu Shijio directly looked at Di Fui and asked, "Which way should we go?" Di Fui stood there for a moment to ponder, and then took her to a path. Here, the route was really smooth, and they did not trigger any mechanisms along the way. "We have to move faster. Yin Yanli might be back very soon." Gu Shijio was still uneasy. Di Fui laughed. "Rest assured, he is with Kuan Shui. He won't be back before dawn." "Ah, so his name is Kuan Shui. This name is perfect for him, as he is such a talented person. However, I believe you should know that Yin Yanli is not someone who can be easily fooled. Kuan Shui may not be able to hold him for long." Chapter 2468. Don't be fooled by his appearance. In all honesty, Kuan Shui is not my subordinate. He is a friend. In the past, he and a close friend of his had violated the rules in the Devil Kingdom. I personally went to apprehend him. Kuan Shui once held me back for nearly an hour. Believe me, with Kuan Zui's perverted means, Yin Yanli will be going nowhere. I can get away from him within 5 hours. He is considered very capable. He is undoubtedly powerful then, Gu Shijio said with a sigh. Someone who could hold Di Fui for nearly an hour must not be someone ordinary. Di Fui pulled her into his arms and continued. "I am the most powerful, though. Do not boast about other men to me." It appeared that Di Fui was rather jealous of other men. Instead of being annoyed, Gu Shijio actually liked it. "Yes, you are the best." Gu Shijio entertained him. She turned back and pinched his face. "My Fui is the best. No one can compete with you." Even though that was what Di Fui wanted to hear, the manner in which it was done made him feel as though Gu Shijio was coaxing a child. Having his face pinched certainly added to that feeling. After that, Di Fui held her hand and did not let her do it again. Gu Shijio then recalled the moment when she was making the necessary arrangements with Di Fui while they were in the carriage. Kuan Shui stood there with the appearance of Shun Jiuli, listening very gracefully and only speaking when necessary. When Di Fui asked him to do something, he would always respond very quickly. However, when Di Fui asked him to impersonate Gu Shijio as a way to confuse Yin Yanli, he refused to do it. He told Di Fui that he could hold the opponent for more than 5 hours, but he could not go to Lewis City and meet them afterward. He wanted to return to Luo Shaxi. Earlier, when a young palace master received the news from Yun Yanli, Gu Shijiu was not too far away and could hear the conversation. Although Yun Yanli did not say where he was, it was apparent that he was not coming back anytime soon. That was proof that Kun Shui succeeded in holding him up. Even though Gu Shijiu was relieved, she still had some concerns about the man's safety. After all, Yun Yanli was extraordinarily powerful. Kun Shui might not be able to cope with him if the two were to get into an intense battle. Don't worry, Kun Zui's original body is that of a Kun. He could transform into thousands of different forms. Even Yun Yanli would struggle to get him. Di Fui gave her reassurance. A Kun Peng had wings that were 9,000 miles wide. A Kun is a mythological beast. In the sea, it was a Kun. However, on land, it was a golden-winged giant Peng. It could transform into any shape. It could even transform into something as huge as a mountain or as tiny as a speck of dust. Gu Shijiu had only heard about it, but had never seen it before. She did not expect Di Fui to have such a capable ally. Regardless of how powerful Yun Yanli was, he could not catch a molecule in the water. No wonder his stealth technique was so good. He was not invisible, but just made himself become infinitely small so that people could not even see him. If Kun Shui really wanted to escape, Yun Yanli might not be able to catch him at all. Hence, Gu Shijiu let out a sigh of relief. Di Fui took her hand and said, "You will need to stay far away from Kun Shui." Why? This person is very flirty. Flirty? It is just his character. He likes to play with girls. You need to stay far away from him. Gu Shijiu carefully recalled the appearance of Kun Shui. I think he is cool. When you ordered him to work, he did not even question you and always took your commands very seriously. Di Fui raised his hand and touched her hair. Don't be fooled by his appearance. Chapter 2469. He was so knowledgeable the guy was sly and very slick about it. He saw that Gu Shijiu was Di Fui's prized possession, so he naturally acted like an ordinary loyal subordinate to try to subdue his existence, so as not to provoke Di Fui accidentally. Meanwhile, Di Fui continued to caress her face. Gu Shijiu enjoyed his pampering, but also felt somewhat awkward. Even though she was a lot older than Di Fui, he seemed to always want to treat her like a little girl. Fortunately, Di Fui did appear to be older than her, so it would not prove to be an issue to third parties. She grabbed his hand and patted him with her other hand. "Prince Nianma, behave yourself. Don't simply touch me inappropriately in public." She patted him like a puppy, and Di Fui could not help but pull her into his embrace and kiss her aggressively. It was only when they started to feel a little tired that he let her go. "I didn't touch you. I kissed you." Gu Shijiu pushed him away and remarked, "You are too naughty." While they were talking, the two of them had entered into the depths of the cave and came to a big hall. The vivid imagery brought flashbacks to Gu Shijiu, as the layout here was precisely the same as the underground labyrinth in Suye City. There were also shelves with different colored crystals displayed on it. There were many crystals there, perhaps as many as the stars. Gu Shijiu was excited to see the spiritual crystal and wanted to collect them all. However, she still had a lot of things in her storage space, so there was only a limited amount that she could take with her. She tugged on Di Fui's sleeve and said, "Your storage space is ample enough. Let's take all these spiritual crystals. The crystals are helping Yun Yanli with his evil plans. Perhaps after they are destroyed, the Shuro world will return to normal." Di Fui had a look around the hall and frowned. Something is not right. He grasped Gu Zijia's small hand that was just about to take the biggest crystal. Slowly, these spiritual crystals are weird. Gu Shijiu was stunned and withdrew her hand. She studied the spiritual crystal carefully, but could not see any difference. How is it weird? Something is not quite right about their aura. He waved his sleeve at the biggest spiritual crystal and noticed that there was a black gas on the crystal. The black gas was like a little devil. When it appeared, it even opened its mouth. Gu Shijiu saw that it was going to scream, so she quickly cast a spell at it. The little devil seemed to have gone mute momentarily. Di Fui also cast a spell on it, and a colorful light wrapped itself around the little devil. Following a loud sound, the little devil appeared to have been knocked out. "Why don't you kill it?" Gu Shijio could see that this little devil was extremely fierce. It had probably killed before. "We can't kill it now," Di Fui continued. "It serves as an alarm. Whether it screams or is killed, it will alert the people outside. Therefore, it is best for us to knock it out." Admirably, Gu Shijio stared at Di Fui in awe. He was very knowledgeable. "Silly, did you think that my title as Devil King is fake?" He put his fingers together again and shot light at different spiritual crystals in the hall. When the colorful lights passed over the crystals, little demons had emerged as well, and he immediately knocked them out. In just a brief moment, he knocked out more than 20 little devils. The little devils were guarding various types of spiritual crystals, which made it difficult for any imposters to find a pattern. If any outside were to touch the wrong crystal accidentally, they would probably find themselves badly hurt. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.